You're listening to the AfterBuzz TV network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Gene. Johnson.
From the AfterBuzz Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is AfterBuzz TV's House of Cards After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AfterBuzz TV's House of Cards After Show.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, AfterBuzzers. We are here in the AfterBuzz studio doing House of Cards, Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 16. I like to refer to it as the Matador versus the Bull. I am your host, Sofia Stanley, joined in the AfterBuzz studio along with...
Hi guys, I'm McKay.
And we also have maybe a special guest. Our engineer will be chiming in from time to time. Introduce yourself.
Hey guys, it's Steve. You guys know me.
Well, we are going to get right into this episode. Like I said, I am calling it the Matador versus the Bull. I definitely feel like we are seeing the beginnings of the rumblings of a fight going on with the entitlement amendment. And as we kind of predicted, Frank is right in the midst of things. The episode opens up and the President of the United States of America is practicing his State of the Union speech. And Frank is drawing, seeming very disinterested. How did you feel about the opening, Emma?
I thought it was great, and just to go a little bit further into it, this is my favorite episode, and I'm going to disclose I have not seen the rest of the season. Some people might think, some of us have, some of us have not, but this was by far my favorite episode so far. It was amazing the way he... it's like he's been in office for 10 seconds and he's already breaking, it's like that little kid that starts walking and then opens every single drawer, throws out the plates. So it's definitely going to be interesting. He's rocking a lot of boats. I completely agree. For me,
I thought initially when Frank kind of was drawing, I was like, well, why is he so disinterested? And, normal to Frank's kind of narcissism, he is drawing a bull and he's coloring it in. And then he immediately kind of, once the president is done talking, he kind of, motions to Raymond, basically kind of like, okay, the president is done playing the president. Now let's, the big boys really figure out how to run this country.
And it's really interesting how they open it up, especially with him phrasing, some people are doormats and some are, matadors, and he's obviously trying to imply that he's going to be the one stopping the bull. So it's a very important and significant opening because he's already planning his, to me I felt like he was planning his takeover of the Oval Office.
His ascension to the throne.
No, I think very well said. And it's funny because I think, as we've said time and time again, I really, on this show, think that they are extremely deliberate in their scenes and deliberate in their examples. And bullfighting is obviously a very traditional cultural aspect for the Spanish culture. However, it's also very controversial. And the whole essence of bullfighting is literally that the matador is supposed to make the killing of the bull beautiful, right? It's, he's outfitted in, really beautiful garb. He uses the red cape to distract the bull and to, in essence, play with him and taunt him and to basically tire the bull so that at the end, he sticks the bull with a sword and he kills him. And I felt as if this was the beginning preparations of that. Just like you're saying that he's really...
I think there's more imagery into it than that. I think the more imagery to the bullfight and what's going on in the White House is it's kind of a soliloquy on the show itself, on politics in the norm. Because when you look at a bullfight, when people go to a bullfight, they're like, oh, it's a show. I'm going for entertainment. And when you look at American politics, you see politics. You don't see what's actually happening behind the scenes. And in a bullfight, it's literally somebody, it's not entertainment. It's somebody slicing a bull. It's somebody killing a bull. It's very gory. It's very terrifying. It's torturous. And that's just like American politics. It's just the side we don't see.
But do you guys think that the bull was signifying Tusk, or was it the president? I took it that he was trying to, you know, tame and play, and the bull represented Tusk to me.
See, it's
just
funny.
the way he approached him right after he was done drawing, and it was, you know, he wasn't even finished shading it in. He approached Tusk right away.
You know what's funny? When I watched it, I initially thought that it was the president and Tusk, and I didn't necessarily view them as separate. But now, after hearing how Steven kind of drew out the analogy with the bull, I think that's really telling. So I think that it's really analogous of the fact that Frank is going to gore anyone who stands in his way, or anything, any obstacle. So I think that basically he's just saying that he's the Matador, he's in full control, and he knows that at the end, no matter what, he has to kill the bull, or be killed.
And what's also interesting about this episode is seeing Christina at the table, you know, with Linda and with the president. It was something that I would have never expected in season 1. I don't think any of us would have thought that Christina would come so far, but you see how Frank strategically aligned everyone that he needs to be at the table with him. So it's to the point where now Christina is, you know, the president's calling her along with Linda, who's, you know, his right-hand person, to give him advice. So I'm thinking, wow, Frank did one hell of a job.
No, I completely agree. And I think, you know, going back to season 1, we couldn't decide whether or not he was reactionary or proactive. And I think at this point, it really doesn't matter. Frank is very adept at putting players or pawns on the chessboard exactly where they need to be. And I think that it shows that when he kind of talks to Tusk, and he, you know, says, okay, this is what we're going to do. And Tusk goes, okay. And Tusk goes, you know, the president's going to need some convincing, which obviously we can see that Christina is very good at not necessarily convincing the president, but at least suggesting things that the president likes. And then you have Tusk saying, okay, well, then it should be me, you know, because I'm basically the president's friend. And in that moment, you see Frank realize, oh, I have you, because you're emotionally invested in the president. You're not a ruthless pragmatist. You actually have emotions in so much as the fact that I'm kind of coming into your territory. You're not just thinking about it from a business perspective. You're actually now thinking to yourself like, oh, I could be losing my friend. Which I think is going to play out, because I think that Frank doesn't really value friendship.
Well, I mean, we've seen it over and over again. The only person that I kind of feel like he values friendship with is, well, number 1, Claire, because they're more than, you know, just husband and wife. They're best friends. They share everything. But, you know, I kind of feel like he's a little bit on the friends level with Doug Stamper, but I'm kind of iffy on that. I feel like he's disposable just like everyone else to him. If time comes and he needs to do it, he will do it.
Very, very well said. Well, let's fast forward a little bit, because basically with the entitlement amendment, Frank basically thinks that he's going to give a win to the Republicans. The entitlement amendment or entitlement reform is basically a Republican platform or a Republican initiative. He, you know, goes to the table with both the Democrats and the Republicans. He thinks he can try to make a deal. At the last minute, it seems like the deal is going to fall apart. And Frank goes into pure Frank mode, which seems as if he's best in a crisis situation. And he's making phone calls, but he then is talking, I'm not sure the gentleman's name, but the gentleman basically says he knows every rule within, you know, the parliamentary structure. And basically Frank asks him, okay, find one for me that I can bend. And I'll be very honest with you, AfterBuzzers, I am like a nerd when I watch TV. So after I was done watching, I literally had to look up why this was important. And it will obviously play out. And for the rest of you guys, probably were very aware that you need to have a quorum and you have to have a proper majority and so forth and so on. But I definitely had to look it up because I was a little bit lost as they were going. I had a feeling where they were going, but I didn't see what was about to happen at all.
Can I just say that I didn't know whether to be nervous or to laugh or to, you know, how to feel about that whole situation and that scene and the way he carried it out. It was just marvelous.
I mean, I completely agree, because I mean, the way that he walked on the Senate floor, and basically, you know, reminded the president pro temp that he, as the vice president of the United States of America, is in fact the president of the Senate. So he needs to take his rightful seat, or I'm going to say throne. And then, you know, he proceeds to make them read the roll call quicker. And the Republicans then realize that they don't, in fact, have a majority, so they leave so that there isn't a quorum. And if there isn't a sufficient number of individuals, a vote can't even be taken. And when that happens, you think, oh, like Frank's done for. Like at this point, this is his first major initiative as the vice president. He has to win, and he needs to make this seamless. And we realize that he always wins, but he definitely doesn't make things seamless. And he has basically one of the senators make a motion to have the sergeant in arms physically arrest senators who are not present, who are not sick or geographically unable to show up. In essence, he's basically saying you have to do your job. If you're a senator and you're not sick and you don't have a viable reason not to be in the Senate to make a vote, then we have every right to physically make you appear.
And that was something that I don't think they even expected from Frank. But he went to that point, I think, because of Claire. Because Claire said, "Don't prove a point to anyone. Prove it to me." And I think that's very powerful coming from a wife. And in season 1, I was thinking Claire was not, you know, that Frank was more powerful. In season 2, I'm leaning more towards Claire. That Claire is running the show. She's coming, you know, out from her hiding, and she's getting more comfortable expressing and vocalizing how she feels. And you see her more, even though Frank is the one running the show, she's the mastermind controlling him. And giving him power and, you know, more of a guidance to carry out what he needs to do.
I think it's when you limit somebody and force them in a tough situation to get it done no matter what, she's kind of that driving force that forces him to not give up. Because when all things seem helpless, she's the one there like, you're goddamn Frank Underwood. I mean, come on, like, get it done. Because I'm not going to hold your hand. I'm not going to baby you. Get it done. So.
No, I agree with both of you. And the only thing that I would add to that is I think it's also a matter of, and I'm not sure if this is the art of war, but you have to respect your enemy. I think that Frank often gets into trouble in the fact that he actually doesn't respect anyone else, presumably other than Claire. So when Claire's saying, prove it to me, she's probably one of the only people that he actually values her opinion and values how she thinks about him. So again, to basically both of your points, that I think she is definitely coming into her own, and I think she is consciously kind of pushing him into a corner to see, well, what are you made of? But I really think it's also that she knows, you know, he respects her, and it would actually hurt him more to disappoint her than potentially anyone else.
I was a little bit disappointed in President Walker and how he was handling the situation. I thought he was so immature, you know, how, you know, at the end of the day, obviously it all reflects on him if it, you know, if it goes bad and they don't get the vote. But it's, you know, it's like still, even though you have expectations of him, he's only been in office for how long? And you're telling him basically, don't regret my choice of putting you in office, while you have your friend talking your ear out. And we find out basically that Tusk did the exact opposite of what he told Frank he was going to do. And even that conversation Frank had with Tusk on the phone, you know, telling him that if he's going to be two-faced, then he should, you know, really watch how he turns his face and what he says, that it's not going to come back to him, was, you know, that's like letting the bull out. Now it's like time for Frank to, you know, kill the bull. That's what it is. It was like, okay, bring it on now.
No, I completely agree. And what kind of sometimes confuses me, but in a good way with this show, is just when I think I know where Frank is going, I actually don't. So he pushes people, in my opinion, a little bit too hard. So what's the point in telling Tusk? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the point in telling him, like, I know you're two-faced? Like, I know what the point is, but part of me sometimes, as he's saying these things, I'm like, why don't you just let him think he won? Do you know what I'm trying to say? But I realize that there's a certain aspect of Frank that he really is that might is right, I rule by fear, and that no one can get over on him, especially someone, and when I say someone, I mean both Raymond as well as the president, someone he feels has already gotten over on him. He can never allow them to think.
No, and by him clicking the phone on Tusk and not letting him have the last word was already, him telling Tusk that, I think he's like, I'm going to win. You could do whatever you want. You could stay as his friend still. But at the end of the day, it's going to be my decision and my political expertise versus just you being his friend. He says, you're an expert dealing with birds, but I'm the expert politician here, and I know what's right. So you go handle your birds. I'm going to handle everything else in the office.
Now, Sophia, I'm going to channel some Frank Underwood for a moment here, and I'd like to tell you about what this show likes to do. And when you're using the animals as a subtlety, you have to understand that they have more to them throughout the series than the one episode. What is the first season? What is the first scene of this entire show? It's I don't like unnecessary pain. It's Frank putting the dog down with brute force. He's putting something that's scared and crazy with fear out with brute force. And then at the end of the first season, I believe it is, we have the scene with Freddie who talks about, oh, well, these ribs taste better today. What'd you do? New sauce? No, actually, it was a slow-killed pig where they bleed it alive. Like, that's another big thing that goes into Frank's character. While he doesn't like the unnecessary pain, in some respects, it helps him. It makes things taste better to him. And then you take it to the bullfighting again. Okay, well, I don't necessarily like pain to animals, but it might be easier to deal with them if they are in a riled up and angry state. And if you look at Tusk and you look at everyone around him, he's a wolf in a henhouse. He's a shark in a fish tank. It's like everyone is behaving exactly the way he predicts them to. And as he plays it this way, he's just putting them out of their unnecessary pain of being inane. Like he's calmly being the bullfighter. He's calmly riling them up, making them more and more angry with him as he calmly makes moves and they act on impulse, which is what Tusk is doing right now.
But, Tusk is smart. I don't think he's going to, Frank is going to defeat him that easily because just like killing the dog, slowly killing the dog, Tusk didn't have a problem killing the bird that kept on that was singing and making noise.
But if you think about it, the bird was an example of Tusk was acting on impulse. Tusk was not dealing with unnecessary pain. He was acting out of his own anger. He wasn't thinking calmly like the bullfighter. He was thinking enraged like the bull.
But sometimes that's even more dangerous when you don't have it strategically planned out and you're, acting on instinct.
And that's why it's such a great analogy, because the bullfighter doesn't always win.
Exactly.
Well, oh my goodness. I'm like still reeling, but literally let us know which way you fall by going to iTunes.com. All you have to do is you go to iTunes and you type in AfterBuzz TV, House of Cards, and you can join our podcast or subscribe to the podcast so that the minute they become available, they just pop into all of your smartphones or your tablets or however you watch us. You can also rate, comment, and like I said, subscribe. But more importantly, when you comment, you can join this conversation. You can tell us whether or not you think that Frank is deliberately riling up the bull, and if that is to his advantage or potentially to his disadvantage, or anything else that we've talked about. Or you can propose other things for us to talk about and kind of help us lead the conversation. And you can tell us if you like what we're talking about, or if you're like, you know what, I don't even like Frank. Let's actually talk about Lucas, Rachel, Jackie, Doug, or any of the other characters. But let's just wrap up the entitlement amendment and kind of finish up with that and how that ended, and then we'll move on to some of the other characters.
Awesome.
So the only thing that I kind of didn't see happening, and this is going to sound like a silly comment, I think that season 1, underestimated Frank's business acumen. I mean that in so much as I felt that because he was the whip, he was used to just whipping and doing things out of fear, and I didn't necessarily think that he was a strategist as it related to politics, if that sounds right. for me, the scene where he finally had the quorum and Curtis basically was like, okay, I'll filibuster. And he basically was like, you know, no matter how much I'd love to watch you hold your piss for the next 2 days, you know, basically it's already a bill that they basically bypassed and wrote into the amendment that it basically, the minute the amendment, it basically didn't have to have further debate. Honestly, I don't know why I was surprised, given the fact that Frank had been in the Senate for the last 20 years and was the, you know, the majority whip for the House of Representatives. That still caught me off guard. And I know this may sound weird. I actually like that. I like that even though we are, you know, 16 episodes into the series, that Frank still surprises me with what card he's able to play.
But I think he had it planned all along. He knew exactly, even from the first meeting he knew exactly how the meeting was going to go. So he had, you know, his points prepared, you know, what agreement he was going to make, what he was going to give up. You know, he wanted 10 years, 15 years. He's like, fine, you know, let's shake on it. He knew all the moves they were going to make. But, you know, it was unexpected last minute for them to back out of their deal. But, you know, then again, it's Frank. He's never...
Well, it was Curtis Haas. Haas was the guy who convinced people to back out, but at the same time, they had enough people they could whip up because he's so good at being the whip, he could still do his job and get the votes he needed. But he needed time for the Republican Party not to get back at the people who he whipped up. So it's kind of like an offer and a counteroffer. He got these people to switch sides, but he needed to get them voting before Haas and his people could come and get them and choose them and steer them the right way. And that's why they were going to announce a name every hour as opposed to, because they needed time to get to the congressman, to get to the Senate, to whip their votes back in their favor before the vote was cast.
And I really love how we get to see the behind the scenes of what goes on, because to us, passing a bill is so boring. All you hear about is, you know, the bill went to the floor, you know, it went to the president's desk, but you don't really find out what happens and, you know, all the arguments and the quorum and everything they have to go through to pass one bill, and all the motives and agendas everyone has behind passing something, you know, all the bribes they give. You know, he's calling people up, you know, okay, I'll fund two of the hospitals. What else do you want? Are you on board? So Frank is capable of doing everything and anything, I'm convinced at this point, to get what he wants.
I think the saddest thing about this series is that as we see these big moves, we see them as they are in the circle of these characters. But the only character that really showed us how it exits the circle was Russo. With one little move to get one vote to pass one bill, put 12,000 people out of a job. Like that kind of thing. So like every move they make and everything that each side kind of fights for, they're all fighting for their district to get a benefit as opposed to the other person's district. But the problem is there are the people like the, what's this called, Durant, who are in it for only the money for their benefactors, who is the big oil. What was it, something?
Sancor.
Sancor.
Oh, you mean Remy Danton?
Remy Danton, that's what I mean. So Remy Danton's in everyone's pockets for Sancor when most of the Congress people who are for their district are not getting what they need because they're not powerful enough because they don't have that backing. So that's where the corruptness comes from. So you see this on the flesh. This show is like, oh, I see this person doing this person doing this. But when you kind of think about it, it's really terrifying because this is actually what's going on in our Congress. Like this is actually, these are valid examples of what people are dealing with right now. So our whole political system is so flawed that it's great to see this rise to power from somebody who never even had a vote aside from being elected to his...
No, I agree with you, but I think that part of the problem, let's just go down on this line of thinking for a quick second, it kind of goes to the point that Emma was saying, that we think that passing a bill is so boring. So much of this is public information. So much of it is, you know, on C-SPAN, you know, live as long as you have cable. And now in this 24/7 internet age that we live in, you can tap in at all times. I think the problem is we do view it kind of like a bullfight. We view it as a spectator sport and not something that we're actively involved in. And I think that because we're not actively involved in, we check in every once in a while if there's kind of a big story or there's a scandal, and we all kind of chime in, but we're not necessarily active members of a democracy or are active constituents. So for instance, I think that most people probably, they follow various people on Twitter, but they may not follow their senator or their representative, let alone the vice president and or the president of the United States of America. So I think it kind of says something in terms of what we're following and how much we are holding ourselves accountable, because I kind of see us as the fourth branch of government. And it's our job to be as involved as the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branch. So I completely agree with what everyone's saying. And I do agree that it is analogous to how politics is run and the corruption. But the flip side of it is that I think at the end of the day, we as the citizens of America basically need to make sure that we're taking an active role and not necessarily being passive and then complaining because we didn't enter the fight.
Exactly.
And most people see this as just a movie, a drama, series. But as you said, a lot of it is reality. People take mid-level jobs it's not because they want to help their community or they want to do the job and they love it. No, it's because they're brokering other deals that they're getting through that office, through whatever, depending on what companies they're dealing with. And Remy he took everything that Frank taught him, he absorbed all the information, and he went off and started making money off of it, because that's powerful knowledge to have. To be dealing with people and to know who has what connects and who has, oil and this and that. So he's just benefiting and using what Frank taught him.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree. Let's move on. Or no, you know what? The only thing I just want to touch upon is just the final scene with Frank when the President of the United States of America is making a State of the Union. And in the midst of his speech, he actually thanks Frank by name for helping the passage of the Entitlement Amendment. I thought that was pretty major. And then in true Frank fashion, he speaks directly to us and he basically reminds us, that basically, previously he was, on the edge of the frame, and now he's 3 feet away, i.e., not only 3 feet away in terms of the fact that he always talked about location, but literally 3 feet away from the President of the United States of America, whatever that means at that moment.
Love it. Just like Ellen's tweet that broke the record. He's right in the center of the frame.
Very well said. Very well said. Very well said. Well, let's quickly just go to Lucas, Rachel, and then Jackie if we have time. Lucas is still on his pursuit of justice for Zoe Barnes. What do you guys think? You think he's crazy?
I don't know what he's thinking. It's like, especially being a journalist, working for the Herald, how can you trust someone that is able to hack into your computer and you're like, okay, well, let me come and meet you. Let me see what information you could give me. You don't know who's setting you up. You don't know, what information they're trying to get from you or, the company, the Herald, the server. And I just think he's way over his head.
If he's not smart enough to know that when his screen's doing all that stuff and he's not smart enough that he's getting hacked, I don't think he's smart enough to really know what he's getting into with people who are above his head.
No, and I think that's an excellent point, and I think that it proves to the point where I'm having a hard time thinking that Lucas is not intelligent, given what I presume to be his age and the level that he's risen to, arguably, one of the top newspapers in the country, let alone Washington, D.C. I really think it's that he's still in a state of mourning. And he's still in a state of shock. Because again, I think there's a very big difference when you lose someone close to you through natural causes, or even if it's through some kind of accident. And even more so, sadly, if the person that you love is murdered. However, I think it's a completely different conversation if you, in your heart of hearts, know 100% the person who killed them.
But he's exposing himself, trying to find the information. If he's smart enough, do it without exposing yourself.
I really think he's not thinking. And not because he's not smart. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
But he's acting on emotion. He's acting, on that, love, and he misses, Zoe, and he wants to kind of set her free.
Right.
To give her, you know, that, to find the information that she was looking for to complete the journey for her. But at the same time, you're going to Christina. You've emailed her the information. You've put it in writing. You were doing a search online on the vice president. You know, she's telling you that if you come one more time, she's going to tell, you know, Frank Underwood herself that what is going on and all the emails that you've sent her. And you still try to, you know, uncover this information through this person who is running your fingerprints, is making you hack into your the server at work, and you show up to their apartment not knowing who they are. Is it a setup? Hello, Zoe just got killed. You know it for sure. How do you know it's not Frank setting you up, or, you know, his people?
This is kind of a dig towards journalism as well, in that they're making a dig that journalists like to be martyrs. And he's kind of playing the martyr card here, in that he just wants to get the story no matter what. He's motivated by Zoe's death, but at the same time, I think his character style and like where he is in his career, like where he's been put, like at the Herald, he kind of already kind of has that framework for wanting to be a little bit self-destructive to get something, to get the story out there. And I don't think he really cares about his life too much. I mean, he after Zoe died, he was just so disheveled, and I don't know, it's hard to put into words, but I see him as a martyr more, like viewing himself as a martyr. I don't see him as somebody in mourning as much, because he wouldn't be as eager to pull Jackie into it. Janine, yeah, he wouldn't be as eager to pull Janine into it, because like he's looking at her as like, she's got a mom, she's got things to take care of, she's got all this. Somebody's died because of the information that's out, and he just wants to involve everyone because he thinks that everyone should be as willing to die for a cause as he is, and that's the whole martyrdom clause that's in his character.
Well, and then, you know, Janine says, you just want me to give you basically approval to carry on and to continue doing what you're doing, but you know, she's moved on. She knows what's important for her in her life, and she's okay teaching and not chasing this ghost, or, you know, even if it's not a ghost and you know who it is, it's a bull. You don't want to play with the bull. You don't know if at the end of the day you're going to get killed or you're going to kill the bull. So that's a big risk that he's taking, and not being savvy, not knowing that someone's hacking your computer. You're calling the IT guy to come in, you know, check your computer. I'm like, boy, I feel sorry for him. He's not going to survive this.
All right. Well, you know, talking about not necessarily martyrs, but potentially victims, let's move on to Rachel. You know, Rachel, again, has been moved. Doug moved her. Why? Again, because Lucas is still on his hunt for information. You know, and she's now at a call center. We see her calling her mom. Was anyone surprised that she called her mom, that she reached out to her mom?
I was, but at the same time, I compare her and I view her to be very similar to Zoe when we first were introduced to Zoe, even like her apartment, the dim lights, the darkness, she, you know, not communicating with her family. Zoe was calling her dad, you know, she called him, I think, for Father's Day.
Only at Frank's behest,
yes. So I see a lot of similarities between those two characters. But, you know, of course, Rachel is just, she's a lot younger, and, you know, Doug is not Frank.
Yeah.
Even though we're seeing a lot of aggressiveness from him that is just kind of disturbing, because he's, you know, you want her to stay in the apartment. Okay, she's telling you she hasn't talked to anyone, but she's not a prisoner.
Right.
She's doing you a favor.
And not only is she not a prisoner, it's not as if you have her doing telemarketing from her home. It's not like you've told her not to leave. Like, she obviously has to interact and engage with other people. I think where I was a little bit confused was when he pulled the brochure for the fellowship out of the trash can and basically put it on the table, and, you know, and basically put her, you know, she went to go grab it and he put his hand on hers and he said, you know, if anyone contacts you, let me know. Was he telling her to go to the fellowship, or was he not?
I wasn't too sure on that. He's such a strange character, in that, I mean, I feel like we know he was an alcoholic. I mean, we went through that with Russo and things like that, and we know that alcohol is something that has power over him, and then we also have Frank Underwood, who has power over him, but he doesn't really care about money. And then if you don't care about money, what do you care about? You care about power. So he doesn't really have power over anyone, so he's kind of taking this as his way of, like, his vice in a way. Like, he's releasing himself by exerting his power over her, because otherwise he's kind of just everyone's bitch at this point.
No, that's true. And it's funny, that's actually where I went to, but there was like that little tiny part of me that was thinking he was actually trying to do something nice, and he was trying to protect her on some larger standpoint, because, you know, she just burned her hand. He tried to help her with the ice. She didn't want help. And I felt that in some small way, he basically was actually giving her the fellowship, because similar to AA, you have to believe in a higher power in order to stay focused, right? Like, you can't do it alone. So I thought for a split second, and trust me, it was only a split second, I really was thinking, like, maybe he's saying, like, no, like, you need to believe in a higher power so that you can stay focused, but I don't know.
I think he cares for you. I think he cares for her the same way somebody cares for a pet. I think that's the thing. Like, he loves her, but as soon as that pet tries to run away from you, he's going to pull it back on that choker leash harder than it even needs to be done.
Okay.
That's kind of how I view his relationship with her.
That's a very good point.
I didn't really take it that he was, you know, giving her the brochure to go there, because if you're, you know, so concerned about her communicating and you don't know who she might see and who might follow her, why would you want her exposed out there? So he's just weird. You know, we've always said that he has feelings towards Rachel. I don't know if it's you know, more of a love, you know, girlfriend type of feeling, or is it more of a daughter type of, you know, or a sister? Like, I don't know. I'm
or
confused.
All of the above.
Exactly.
Which is disturbing. Yeah, and okay, let's just really wrap up with Jackie. So we, you know, have kind of very little interaction with Jackie, but it's very powerful. You know, she's obviously helping with the entitlement vote. She has an interaction with Bob, and basically, you know, Bob's trying to throw his weight around, and basically is like, well, Frank, and she's like, I'm not Frank. She makes it very clear. And basically she helps to whip the votes. But then we also see her going into a tattoo parlor. You know, kind of very hooded, very secretive. And when she gets in there, we realize that she has been before, and is getting poppies added to her already existing tattoo, as well as filling some stuff in right on her rib cage, where I hear is an extremely painful place to have a tattoo.
Oh, it's terrible. My shoulder blades hurt so bad. It's terrible. right above bone is just the worst.
One thing I do have to say about her is she's a fast learner. She definitely took whatever Frank had to say, and she, you know, played with it. We saw her getting a call from, I'm sorry, what was?
I think it's Catalina Rodriguez. Catalina
and
Rodriguez.
You know, she lied to her. She flat out lied to her and said, I don't know how they got that information. By the way, you know, how is your daughter feeling? So you see that she doesn't mind throwing people under the bus, and she's going to get along perfectly with Frank, because at the end of the day, to take that off her mind and to take that pain, she went to get a tattoo.
But back up real quick. Do you think, though, that it's possible that she can do both? So, for instance, it seemed like she lied, right? And she did. She lied straight to the woman, you know, on the phone. But then when she asked about Emily, there seemed to be actual genuine concern.
No, I think there is genuine concern, because up until, you know, this point, she's been the only one going to see the child, she's been the messenger, and I'm sure over the years she's gotten attached to the child. So, you know, there is emotion, but she needed to do what she needed to do. She wanted to be in Frank's good graces. So,
you know, I knew I always liked you, Jackie. You can handle the necessary sacrifices.
Very well said.
I love it. I love it. Like the way her character was introduced, the way her character got to her position, it was all about she was in the right place at the right time, but she's always been that neutral, chaotic neutral. If I sound like a nerd right now, but she could make the sacrifices, but she could also be on the side of the people, because she has that relationship with that person, with the child, that she could actually get the funding from that guy in the first place. So she was always one who could play both good and evil. And that's what the whip needs to be. Frank plays good really well, but he's not. She's just a little bit of both.
So I'm kind of scared of her getting too tied into her emotions. So, you know, I don't know how she's gonna do later on in the season, but you know, she obviously needed to go and take her pain out somehow.
But I think in a weird way though, I actually for the same example think the exact opposite. I feel like the fact that she's actually dealing with it is good. I think that it's only when, because at the end of the day, they're all human beings. No matter how cold they are, everyone has feelings. I think you're only dangerous to other people or to yourself if you keep those emotions bottled up and you don't have a productive channel or a productive outlet. I think that for her, that's a very productive outlet. Because, I mean, worst case scenario, she's getting ink on her ribs when she could be bottling it up and then reacting purely based on emotion. I think what she did is just like you said, she felt bad. She dealt with the emotion. In essence, she punished herself. Punishment over, and now she can go do her job without having that emotion still attached to her.
We know she cares, but we know she'll do what's necessary. And that's why
she's a good soldier.
Well, that's another point, but that's why the answer was so relevant when how many people did I kill? Enough to keep me up at night. Because she wouldn't be sleeping soundly if she didn't care, but she wouldn't have killed the people if she didn't do what's necessary. So that's why that was an important very line.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree, and I think that's also a very important line for the entire series.
I think she's going to be very crucial for Frank. One, she's a female, so we see how he deals with females, but in a way they still have control over him. So he needs to really focus to keep his mind straight on the end goal and what he needs to do. And at the same time, she's been a soldier, so she's going to follow what he says because she knows ultimately for the greater good and to serve your country, sometimes you do need to shoot, sometimes you do need to kill to get to, you know, or to invade or to win the battle. So we're going to see how she does later on.
I think that is a great point to end on. So we are going to wrap up episode 3, chapter 16, season 2 of House of Cards. And now we are going to go on to very, very quickly a little bit of news and gossip.
AfterBuzz TV News.
A really good friend of mine who lives in DC sent me an article, and it basically said that season 3 of House of Cards is actually kind of a little bit delayed in terms of production. And the reason being is that this show gets a lot of tax credits. They shoot in Maryland. And as many of you know, and if many of you have commented, this is a very weird hybrid. Even though it's a TV show, it's shot very much like each individual episode is a film. And it's shot that way. So that, you know, costs an excessive amount of money. And one of the ways that the film industry or the TV industry can mitigate that cost is through tax credits. And not only through tax credits, but basically by having a production in a certain area, you bring money to that area in terms of, you know, actors, crew, even just where you know, eat and where you sleep. So they're being held up a little bit by tax credits. But, you know, as everyone knows, House of Cards is, you know, an amazing phenomenon, not just a TV show. So I know that they will get that sorted out, and season 3 will, you know, go off without a hitch because they've already been picked up. I think they were picked up before season 2 even started streaming. So that's good for us that we already know that once we get to the end of all of these chapters, there are more chapters.
I just hope they're going to release it sooner than, you know, next year. Because, you know, now that they know they've been picked up and the ball it's rolling, that we're going to get more, the season's coming more sooner than, you know, we don't have to wait a year.
That's a very good point. Well, you know what's funny about that? And please let us know on iTunes, YouTube, and Twitter how you guys watch. For me, for season 1, I watched episode by episode. This year, I actually watch all of them at once. So maybe it depends on how people watch. But all right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to House of Cards AfterBuzz TV, Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 16. I am your host, Sofia Stanley. You can find me on Twitter at Sofia Stanley. Where can we find all of you?
And you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RealEmmaK.
And you can find me on Twitter at Stephen Lemieux, StephenLemieux, or on the Helix podcast, because Helix is an amazing new show on Sci-Fi, and you guys should check it out.
Whew. From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.
Thank you for watching AfterBuzz TV on YouTube. For more of your favorite after shows and interviews, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion on the episode in the comment section below here. We'd love to see what you guys are buzzing about. Thanks again. Buzz you later.